Hello and welcome to Sincerely Elvis Presley. I'm Sean. Whether you're new to the channel or a regular viewer, thanks for tuning in today. I appreciate it. Last time I took a little look at Elvis's Tupelo performance in September 1956, and this time I thought I'd stay in exactly the same time frame, there or thereabouts, and take a little look at his first motion picture, Love Me Tender. Now, Love Me Tender, to my mind, it's never been one that I revisit often in terms of watching Elvis movies. I've almost always considered it as a movie that Elvis happened to be in rather than an Elvis movie. It's a competent enough 1950s Western, but it's not spectacular. And if I'm perfectly honest, I've always found it a little bit of a dull watch. The only reason to watch it for me is the fact that Elvis is in it, and he looks fantastic in it, and he performs some songs in it. So, it's worth it for that, for my mind. But in terms of, the entire history of his movie career, it's kind of way down there as almost a footnote as far as I'm concerned. And actually, when it was being produced, it was something of a footnote and something of a compromise. So Elvis was signed to Hal Wallis for Paramount, but for the first movie, Wallis loaned him out to 20th Century Fox to do Love Me Tender, or as it was going to be called, the Reno Brothers. A story set just after the American Civil War, and the story of one brother returning from the war to another brother that's actually married the girl that was his partner, if you like. I'm getting tongue-tied there. Prior to that, but because they thought that the brother had died during the war, it's a simple enough story. Elvis approaches his role with great aplomb. I think stories say that he turned up on set not only knowing his own lines but everyone else's lines as well, so that kind of shows his commitment. There's a kind of, there's a charm about his performance. He's clearly committed, wants to be a good actor. But the film itself was an utter compromise. Elvis appears third on the billing because apparently there was a lot of noses put out of joint with the two established actors, Richard Egan and Deborah Paget, who wouldn't take anything billing below this young rock and roll star. And the main compromise really is the fact that they kind of hedged their bets. They thought, well, we've got this fantastically successful singing star. We better put some songs in. So the Reno Brothers itself wasn't intended to have any musical numbers in, but they thought they'd hedge their bets and put some in. And they're a kind of weird compromise, because the songs themselves, Love Me Tender, the title track, is very clever. It takes its cue from a track written during the Civil War called Aura Lee, and the melody is taken from that. And if you can search for performances prior to the Love Me Tender movie of Aura Lee, and you can clearly hear that it's Love Me Tender. So it's adapted, but it's adapted from a Civil War tune, which is very clever because the film's set in the Civil War. But because RCA chose to make that a single, the producers thought, ka-ching, we'll rename the film. And so it became Love Me Tender. But you've got the other three songs in there. You've got We're Gonna Move, Let Me, and Poor Boy. That they're certainly not rock and roll songs. They're certainly given a feel of authenticity to the period, kind of. There's accordion playing in there. They've almost got an old-fashioned jig feel to them. So they stay reasonably true to the period that the film's supposed to be in. And I think successfully so. And I think you could sort of back that up. If you look forward to Flaming Star, and you take a cane and a high starch collar out of Flaming Star, drop it into Love Me Tender, put that next to We're Gonna Move, fits in perfectly, I think. cane and a high starch collar would easily have worked in Love Me Tender. So, you know, I think they hit the nail on the head getting those tunes to sound period. But the compromise comes in the fact that Elvis is there performing them, you know, swinging his hips and doing his Elvis thing like he did in the 1950s, which is just, you know, let's face it, in 1956, he outraged the elders with his performance. 90 years earlier, had he have been doing that kind of thrusting and swinging his hips and everything, I think they'd probably have burnt him at the stake. So that's really incongruous. It's like they wanted to sort of appeal to that youth audience, but it just doesn't fit in. So although it's great to watch him in full flight in 56, can't get enough of it, right? But in terms of the film itself, it makes the film an odd compromise. But then again, the film's an odd compromise for the fact that there he is in period clothes, but he's got his famous pompadour and DA and sideburns, which clearly no one would have had during the tail end of the American Civil War. So again, it's this odd sort of mishmash between this serious movie that they wanted to make and then sort of shoehorning Elvis into it, but shoehorning it as a compromise between Elvis the rock and roller and the character Clint Reno that he's playing. And yeah, it's just a strange sort of incongruous marriage to me, and you know, never really one that as I say, other than to watch the fact it's 50s Elvis, it's certainly not a movie that I actually think, in terms of the movie itself, while it's a competent enough 1950s Western, I think had Elvis not been involved, that film would have sunk without a trace. You know, it would have quickly been forgotten, and certainly no one would be talking about it now. So, you know, utterly significant from that point of view. But of course, the other thing really, the other thing that makes it a compromise is they couldn't decide at the end, you know, this idea, the original script, the Elvis character gets killed off, but can we kill off Elvis? Do we want to do that? Do we want to sort of outrage those young audiences and, you know, cause a lot of upset and So it's a compromise. So the character does die, but then of course at the end he sort of appears ethereally on screen as in an angelic form, singing "Love Me Tender" with the extra piece. So it's a weird little compromise of a film, and you know, as I say, to me, I don't really regard it as an Elvis movie. It's a movie Elvis happens to be in. It's very important because, you know, he learns his first acting chops. He gets his first experience of Hollywood. Hollywood gets his first experience of him and learns some lessons that would take it forward and take shape the trajectory that would then follow. So it's very important. And "Love Me Tender" is obviously an evergreen classic of a song itself. But yeah, in terms of the film, I think it's certainly not there. It would never. I don't even know if it'd make my top 20 of Elvis's movies. It might not even. I haven't really thought about that, but it's way down there, but important nevertheless. So the reason I wanted to take a look at it is because, as I said, Elvis looks fantastic in it. He's utterly committed to being a Hollywood actor. It's his dream. He's just 21 years old. It's 1956 and his year's going berserk. He's appearing all over on television, first album out, hit records, you name it. Just an amazing year. So let's talk about the film itself very briefly. You're not going to be surprised, being the Blu-ray evangelist that I am, the only way to watch this movie is on Blu-ray. The Blu-ray of this movie is pretty good watching. It's pretty clear, nice detail, nice definition. So yeah, "Love Me Tender," get the Blu-ray. So one little thing that I thought was quite interesting. So I'm not gonna. This is the Elvis Presley Rebel with a Cause 56. Follow That Dream book, and I'm not going to go into this in too much detail because it's got a broader scope than just Love Me Tender. But what I found interesting, there is quite a lot of Love Me Tender in here. But one of the things that I found really interesting is this idea that Elvis approached his role as Clint Reno in a very method way. So very Brando-esque, very James Dean-esque. And there was this desire of Elvis to emulate Dean, who was a great hero of his. And what I found in here, I thought was a really interesting little piece from the producer of Love Me Tender, David Weisbart. Now, he talks about the difference between Elvis and James Dean, and it's quite illuminating, I think. He says, so far as teenagers are concerned, Elvis is what I call a safety valve. By that, I mean they scream, holler, articulate, and let go of their emotions when they see him perform. But when they watch Jimmy, James Dean, perform, they bottled their emotions and were sort of sullen and brooding. Elvis is completely outgoing, whereas Jimmy was the direct opposite. Basically, Jimmy was a loner, whereas Elvis is gregarious. Elvis was extremely cooperative, never late, and always on time. Jimmy's cooperation came from his professional attitude, but there were times with Jimmy when you were walking on jagged edges of broken glass. Both boys were immature, but it was not as easy to spot in Jimmy, who was introverted. Part of Elvis's charm lies in his immaturity, but he is still a shred kid with all Jimmy's knowledge and ability to use charm. I never got an uneasy feel about Elvis because on the surface he seemed to be open and impulsive. But Jimmy was never open and never did anything impulsively. I thought that was quite interesting, the difference between the two. And there's that enthusiasm that Elvis had for everything that was happening to him, for being in Hollywood, that comes across really well, I think, in the movie itself. So I just want to look at, because he looked so fantastic at the time, I want to look at a couple of books that specifically focus on Love Me Tender. This is a book that came out, I think it came out in the States in 1990 and was published here in the UK in 91 on Fantail. And this is called Elvis in Hollywood, but it is basically newly discovered photographs of Elvis filming Love Me Tender from the Michael Ox archives. Michael Ox, a well-known photographer, photographed loads and loads of celebrities over the year. So this book by Steve Pond is solely dedicated to the filming of Love Me Tender. You see Elvis arriving on his way to Hollywood. Quite famous photographs, those. You see the costume tests. I think are fascinating myself. Men's wardrobe. Reno farmhouse. Now there are quite a lot of familiar photographs in this one, but there are some quite rare ones, and this is one of those titles that's really easy to pick up. Search for Elvis in Hollywood, Steve Pond, and you'll find this one. This particular copy in mint condition, bearing in mind we're talking about 1991, cost me the princely sum, including shipping, of £7. So you can easily pick yourself up. So there's the recording sessions for the soundtrack. I'd say it's not going to set the world alight in terms of Elvis photo books, but it is well worth adding to the collection, and pretty darn cheap. And I always like it when you manage to pick up a book cheap, and it's, what we're talking, 30 34 years old, and there's no yellow in, there's no fox in. You know, it looks like it's just been picked up off the bookshelves, which I think is brilliant. But yeah, as I say, there are some unfamiliar shots in here. I'm surprised that at the time it says newly discovered photographs, so I guess some of them were, but there's quite a lot of familiar ones. It's a very cool shot. I mean, you know, he looks, the boots, the jacket, this sort of period suit, it just looks for all the world period until you get to that famous hair, and then it's not period at all, is it? So, as I say, it's very much a compromise, I think, in terms of what they ended up doing. But even dropping the original title of the Reno Brothers was a compromise. So, yeah, I think just about everything about it felt like a compromise. As ever, do let me know in the comments, you know, if this could well be your favourite Elvis movie and you're thinking, stop knocking it, Sean. And I'm not knocking it. That's not what I'm doing, and I hope that doesn't come across. It's just not one that I'm that fond of. It's a bit of a, yeah. But look at Elvis in it. Look at it. Look at him. Just fantastic. So there's a little taster, if you like, a little taster volume of Love Me Tender books, and then we get this release from FTD. Now this was a 2021 release, and this is Love Me Tender through the lens of, now I might well pronounce this gentleman's name wrong. It could be Robert Vose, it could be Voser, it could be, you know, it could be something completely different. I'm going to call it Vose simply because I don't know how else it should be pronounced, and I apologise if that's incorrect. And I haven't really been able to find out very much about Robert Vose. And this book is a strange one in the canon of Paul Granlund and David English, who always, when they're doing their FTD books, do a wealth of research and provide huge amounts of in-depth information. Apart from this book's got no information in it at all, and that's not a criticism of them. It just hasn't. There is no information at all in this book. When you open it up, you get an opening in a foreword from the pair of them, talking about how they visited 20th Century Fox Studios and got access to their stills library and were able to see loads and loads of unpublished photographs and material and what have you. And they decided to put this book together based on that. But in terms of the introduction, that's your lot. There's no more information whatsoever in this. So if you want a very definition of a photo book, it's this, because that's all you get. Nothing wrong with that. Brilliant photographs. And actual, I'm gonna quantify that. That's not all you get, because being FTD, you get CDs. In fact, you get 2 CDs. And I think what's nice about this one for me, sometimes FTD would actually give you a cover for the disc they put in it, but quite often you just got the CD in there and nothing else, whereas you get quite nicely designed covers for your discs there. So what do we get? Disc 1 gives us the original Love Me Tender EP, bonus songs, and then outtakes, stereo masters and a couple of interviews. And then disc 2, as recorded September the 1st to the 3rd, 1956 at Radio Recorders. So tracks that were Elvis recorded at the same time, or around the same time as the Love Me Tender soundtrack. So you get quite a generous helping of music with this particular book. You just don't get a lot of information. But let's have a little look at, again, I say it quite often, but when you get one of these sort of large format coffee table books, the visual impact of the pictures is so much better than a smaller book. when you see them up close and personal, if you like. And I've got to say, you know, this one does exactly what it set out to do. There are so many photographs that I'd never seen before here, just tons of them, and really, really nicely done. So I'm not sure about Robert Vose. I did look him up and couldn't really find anything about him. So I'm guessing he was attached to 20th Century Fox, whether he was like the studio photographer. I'm not sure, because this doesn't really tell you, and I couldn't really find out anything much about him. If anyone does have any information, please do put that detail in the comment, because I'd love to know. But I'm not sure who Mr. Vose, you know, I'm assuming he was, you know, attached to the studios and a studio photographer, because he was clearly snapping away during the whole filming of the movie. But just beautiful, beautiful book. You can still get this one. It's by no means as hard to get hold of as some of the FTD's titles. You're going to have to do a bit of searching around and digging to get it, but you can still pick it up. And would I recommend it? Yes, I would. Just look at that. I thought he was dangerously close to picking his nose in that second photograph, but I think he may just be scratching it. But yeah, I mean, that to me is a little bit questionable. I don't know why you'd put, that's the same photograph. There's not even a change in angle. So putting the same one on twice on the same page, not really necessary, but in my opinion. But small gripe for the amount of stuff you get. Just hopefully that's in Elvis's dressing room, isn't it? Yeah, it's got like little cabins for the dressing rooms and set. Hopefully you probably can tell that I heartily recommend this one. Just fantastic book. Just worth pointing out that if you are going to get it, you're not going to be finding much information at all, because that's not what this one was intended to do. But it's all very much behind the scenes stuff, you know. There's not very quite often books give you a lot of stills from the film themselves, but pretty much this is all, you know, candids, I guess, during the making of. But what fantastic photographs. What fantastic photographs. I think we're getting some that were taken, but it's as they're filming it, because you can see various bits and pieces in the background there from the film crew. But just fabulous. Fabulous. So yeah, there is Love Me Tender through the lens of Robert Vose, which this was released as a companion piece. So they put one out called Through the Lens of Philip Harrington. There was another photographer that took lots of photographs of Elvis in '56. So this is almost a companion piece, another Through the Lens of, but this is through the lens of the guy that was there during the filming of Love Me Tender. So got some colour shots at the end here. Beautiful stuff. Just, you know, it's one of those you open and there's just fantastic photography on every single page. And so many, I I can see why they felt the need to, right, we need to put this out in a book, because coming across these must have been wow, you know. Look at these. So, yep, heartily recommend this one. Through the lens of Robert Vose, or Voser, or however it's pronounced. So, that leads us on to this final volume I've got to sort of show on Love Me Tender. This is Into the World of Eric Lorentzen, and this sticks with the original title of the film, The Reno Brothers. And this one was 2018 that this one came out. So I'll just remove its dust jacket and we'll have a little look of what the Reno Brothers has got to offer. Just cool as, isn't it? So what's nice with this one is we start with some of the publicity photographs that were taken around the time, that every time I personally see them, it just makes me think, okay, Love Me Tender. You know? These shots look glorious. So we start with some publicity shots, bit of an introduction. I think this is basically sort of talking about Hollywood during that time and the big draws. Because we've got Marilyn Monroe there. So we've got a bit of an introduction here. We've got some bits and pieces that aren't Love Me Tender, but that, you know, that's okay. That's setting the scene, and it isn't too protracted, really. Sometimes you can get in some of Eric Lorentzen's books maybe too much introduction, but there's Elvis on his way arriving, getting to Hollywood. So we start right at the beginning where we need to. And you get quite a lot of film stills in this book, but they're well done, has to be said. You sort of get your page of those film stills and then a separate photograph on the opposite page, and the whole book isn't like this. It's just the beginning. But I'd say I'd give this one a hearty recommendation as well. It's another gloriously put together, beautiful coffee table book. And you know, what I said about it not being right up there among my favourite films, the way Elvis looked that period is certainly a favourite of mine. So, you know, any book that showcases that, I'm right there with it. So there we go, Mr. Rock and Roll in the story he was born to play. And that's why I kind of, in the title to this video, called that phrase out and put a question mark on it. Was Elvis really born to play this role? I think we, obviously it's clear why they put that as some kind of marketing tag, but I think we certainly see roles in the next 2 or 3 movies that could probably fit that title a lot more than this could. I don't think he was born to play a Civil War cowboy somehow, do you? But nevertheless, brilliant photographs. Brilliant. What's this? Telegram. At the top here. Colonel Parker, Roosevelt Hotel, New Orleans. Dear Tom, congratulations. 20th deal set Elvis to report on Coast between August 20th and 27th to start his first picture, The Rio Brothers. Maybe that was a typo, for which he will receive $100,000 for 10 weeks plus co-star billing. Fox has an option on Elvis for 2 more pictures, $150,000 for the first and $200,000 for the second. Warmest regards. Well, that's William Morris Agency President Abe Lastfagel telegramming the Colonel. It's interesting how most of it is money. Guess what? Money. What a surprise when it came to the Colonel. Not congratulations. To congratulate your star on such a monumental achievement, you know. He's only really been in the national consciousness for less than a year, and he's already appearing in a big motion picture. No, money. Anyway. So yeah, there we go. The Reno brothers, and absolutely fantastic. I think actually we've probably got out of the production now. What we've got here are some nice sort of compilations, collages of some of the takes of those publicities photographs that were taken. So these are quite nicely done, put together. Seeing some alternate shots there that are probably not quite as familiar. Certainly not as familiar to me. Nice to see. And, you know, yeah, we've gone past the production of the film, but this was still the publicity for it, so I don't have an issue with this being included. What I do have an issue with is today I'm not doing very well opening these pages. I do apologise. It's really cold here in the UK still. We're not warming up at all yet. Hopefully soon. Yeah, just brilliant photography. There we go. Fantastic stuff. And we get more of the same, and we get some of the photographs in the actual wardrobe from Love Me Tender. Different shots there. And then some bits and pieces of what happened afterwards. We probably even go to the Tupelo. Yeah, we go to the Tupelo shows. But yeah, a really nice little record. This one, well worth picking up. Not as hard to get hold of as some of Lorentzen's titles. Is becoming a little bit more difficult to get your hands on, but well worth it, I think. Great little document of a great period in Elvis's career. So there we go. Love Me Tender, and a few bits and pieces that concentrate solely on it. So it feels like I've started on Love Me Tender. It would be foolish not to take a look at Loving You next. So I think that's what I'm going to do next week. I'll have a rummage around, see what I've got that relates to Loving You, and we'll take a little look at what's there. So if you enjoyed the video, and I really hope you do, it'd be great if you could just give a click on the thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed for any reason, it'd be great if you could do that also. I'd really appreciate it. So let's have a look at Loving You next week. Have yourselves a great week. Take care. And until then, ta-da.
We'll meet you again. May God bless you. Adios.